Watch this.
Bathrooms and other intimate spaces are, quote, by their very nature, implicate important privacy interests.
There's not one crumb of record evidence in support of Idaho's privacy or safety rationales.
Idaho's transgender bathroom bill goes before a federal appeals court. The question, can it be enforced while other courts decide if it goes against federal law?
Preemptive, preventive measure that people can take if they want to.
Remember that big old healthcare data hack back in February? Well, a lot of us were affected by it, like a third of us. But what if there was a way to protect your information from getting access like that again? Don't our taxes already pay for roads? And aren't those built by state and county agencies? So why is a city asking its citizens to pony up cash for a project outside its jurisdiction? Answers to your viewer questions. All right, here's a fun game. Try to come up with a number of current cases in which the state of Idaho is being sued over the laws passed, I don't know, let's say within the last 5 years. Set aside the most recent lawsuit over the block sale of the Idaho Transportation Department property. There's a handful centered on Idaho's abortion bans, including the abortion trafficking lawsuit we already talked about this week. And then there's another handful focused on restrictive transgender laws. From the very first transgender athlete law, which bans trans girls and women from competing on women's teams, which is still tied up in courts, to the lawsuit that was before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals today, Roe versus Critchfield. This case is over Idaho's bathroom bill, Senate Bill 1100. Signed into law last March, and it says students in Idaho schools have to use the bathroom and locker room, which coincides with their birth gender, not their gender identity. It went into effect in July, but after a lawsuit was filed 5 days later on behalf of a transgender junior high school student, a temporary restraining order was issued in August with the hope of blocking its enforcement while the law gets decided in court. Well, that injunction was denied by a federal court, and that decision for that denial, that was appealed to the Ninth Circuit, who in November temporarily blocked it again while they decide whether they will affirm the lower court's decision. So that brings us to today, whether or not to uphold that denial or issue a preliminary injunction. But in deciding that, the three judges got to hear both sides lay out the crux of their overall case. At issue, the plaintiffs argue Idaho's bathroom bill violates Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, and it also violates Title IX. So Title IX, which was written in 1972, and as Judge Bennett pointed out today, seems to be written referring to sex assigned at birth. It allows for separate and comparable facilities on the basis of sex. So is there discrimination in Idaho's bathroom bill based on sex? Yes, says the plaintiff's attorney from Lambda Legal, against transgender students. Peter Wren said differences in treatment that injure protected individuals, well, that's the definition of discrimination. Wren says Idaho's argument can be separated into two buckets. One, it's a safety or a privacy issue. They have to exclude transgender students because there's no other way to prevent bodily exposure. But as Wren pointed out, Idaho has had 8 years of inclusive policies in about 25% of the state's school districts. And there's no evidence it has ever been a problem. And if there is a real concern with that, he said the solutions would be, well, just close the bathroom stall doors or the locker room shower curtains.
So that leaves the only other argument that the government has available to it, which is about the mere presence of a transgender student. We're talking about transgender students who are using the facilities for the same ordinary and permissible purposes as other students. The concern that cisgender students will engage in an elaborate charade of pretending to be transgender in order to access facilities where they're not supposed to be. And Idaho already takes steps to prevent that. So Boise School District, for example, for the last 8 years has had a policy involving school counselors and written gender support plans to ensure that requests are actually legitimate.
So according to Wren, school resource officers confirmed they already have what they need to handle such situations. And SB 1100, well, adds nothing to that. So on the state side, their attorney, Aaron Hawley with Alliance Defending Freedom, quoted the late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg saying, Title IX establishes separate spaces to disrobe, to sleep, and to perform personal bodily functions. Not only is that separation allowed, but necessary. They claim the law does not violate Title IX because while protecting students' privacy, it allows for accommodations for anyone who doesn't feel comfortable using the boys' and girls' spaces. For example, they can ask to use a staff or a nurse's office bathroom. Okay, so as for the Equal Protection Clause part of this, the state contends the law differentiates based on sex, not on transgender status. After one of the judges asked, doesn't this law only impact transgender students, though? Hawley said in order for there to be a violation, well, it has to be proven there was intent of ill will or hostility.
That's why disparate impact under the Equal Protection Clause requires animus. That animus under the district court's factual findings is lacking here. What Idaho did was do its best.
I can recite to you several things that would lead to the conclusion that some of this was pretextual. For example, Senator Chris Trakel attended a school board meeting in 2023 where he said, "You, under Idaho law, are required to maintain the morals and the health of all students." And thereafter, Senator Cindy Carlson wrote that we need to send the message that we want to educate the kids of Idaho, not indoctrinate them with this garbage. And the fact that SB 1100 itself was drafted by the Idaho Family Policy Center, whose mission is to promote God-honoring public policy and biblical truths in sexuality and gender.
Judge Wardlaw brought receipts, as you can see, right in front of her with the briefs. Well, Hawley went on to say many of those things that she was quoting, well, they were things that were said outside of the legislative context. And the lower court, in its ruling back in October, said the legislature had, quote, no animus. So there you go. Well, this decision is just whether or not to allow the enforcement of the law while the lawsuit plays out. They're not trying to decide whether the law is legal at this point. They're going to see what the lower courts decide with that. So we will wait and see what the Ninth Circuit decides on whether this law goes into effect now or there is an injunction.
We're learning more and being able to adapt and make changes to make it a little bit easier.
How does this fall onto the customer then?
We're providing the services and providing the prescriptions and submitting all of that, so it shouldn't impact the patient directly.
Since February, Idaho's hospitals, pharmacies, and clinics have been working through billing issues. Hackers froze Change Healthcare's payment system nationwide, meaning insurance companies, well, they couldn't pay providers. And we've done several stories on local healthcare providers scrambling to keep the impacts on patients to a minimum, like that one you just saw there. But a lot of it has been out of their hands. Change Healthcare says the data breach is on the dark web now, meaning identity theft is on the table for an unknown number of Americans. It's not hopeless, though. Idaho's Department of Insurance, well, they say a free credit monitoring service could protect your identity. There's Andrew Bartline.
A nationwide United Health data breach set up congressional hearings for more questions.
It will take several months before enough information will be available.
Then answers.
The portal they accessed was not protected by multi-factor authentication.
Meaning roughly 1 in 3 Americans, including Idahoans, are at risk of identity theft.
Any adult should be considering that as an option.
And Shannon Hull is looking closely.
Identifiable information and some personal health information has been part of the breach, and they think it's for a significant number of Americans.
She's the Market Oversight Bureau Chief at the Idaho Department of Insurance.
They work with health insurance companies, which we regulate.
Change Healthcare says pharmacy services are nearly back to normal, and ongoing insurance payment problems remain small. It's the pending problems outside providers' doors they're most worried about.
Is your email address being used in the dark web? Or they look at, was your email address found with a password on the dark web? And then they're notifying you, hey, there's something out there, you might want to change passwords.
It's commonly called a credit monitoring service, and it's a tool to tilt against identity theft.
So this is a preemptive, preventive measure that people can take if they want to.
And it's one Change Healthcare's providing for free. And it's for anyone who thinks they may be impacted.
Certainly could be more than the people who actually experienced an issue related to Change turning off their systems. That was one part of the issue. This is a separate issue that we expect impacts more people.
Change Healthcare says they already found 22 screenshots on the dark web, and they confirmed these documents contained both patients' health information and personal data.
It's an opportunity to just do some of those things that we all know we're supposed to do with cybersecurity, but we don't always. Changing passwords, multi-factor authentication, not clicking on links that you don't know who sent them to you.
It's one small step for the everyday Idahoan.
Our information, I think we were very used to trusting things.
But one giant leap for the American healthcare system.
How in heaven's name did you not have the necessary redundancies so that you did not experience this attack and find yourself so vulnerable?
Change Healthcare set up a call center and a dedicated website to process these free credit monitoring requests. The Idaho Department of Insurance is actively encouraging people to look into that free resource. It lasts about 2 years, or it will last 2 years, I should say. And they say Change Healthcare is a very popular billing system for Idaho hospitals, and a lot of Idahoans have digital records and information in that Change Healthcare system. Still nothing concrete, Brian, on exactly how many people impacted. I've seen reports that say up to 1 in 3 patients in America's healthcare system are under United Health Group, which is the larger company above Change Healthcare. So it could touch a lot of people.
Well, it could be worth your while, though, to look into this free protection, though.
Yeah, and then they'll notify you if something comes up and you're flagged. And if you're like me, you have one password for everything, could be bad news.
Could be bad news. We'll help you figure out another one. All right, thanks, Andrew. Last night, an assortment of law enforcement agencies removed pro-Palestinian protesters from the steps of the Idaho Capitol. And in the process, one Boise police officer was caught on camera pushing one of those protesters to the ground. Abby Davis shows us that video and more in today's 411.
An expert witness shared DNA evidence with jurors in day 20 of Chad Daybell's murder trial. He's accused of killing his wife Lori Vallow Daybell's children, JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan, as well as his first wife Tammy, while he and Lori were having an affair. Forensic biologist Catherine Dace told jurors one of Lori's hairs was found on the duct tape wrapped around the plastic bag JJ's body was buried in. Dace also found ashes, blood, and human remains on some of the tools in Chad's garage from 2020 that she linked to Tylee.
The DNA profile from this item matched Tylee Ryan.
FBI evidence analyst Benjamin Dean testified that Tylee's remains were found in the pet cemetery on Chad's property. Court's back in session tomorrow. Video posted on social media showing a Boise police officer shoving a pro-Palestine protester is making its rounds. The video was posted by one of the organizers of the pro-Palestine protest group in Boise. Last night, protesters were moving their tents and things to the steps of the Capitol when just before 8 o'clock, a mix of law enforcement told them to clear out. You can see in the video a Boise police officer shoved a couple protesters onto the sidewalk. Idaho State Code prevents anyone from blocking the entrance to the Capitol building. ISP says the protesters moved across the street and later back to the encampment at the old Ada County Courthouse. Nobody was taken to the hospital or arrested. Time is running out to request your absentee ballot for the May 21st primary. You have until 5 p.m. tomorrow to request one at voteidaho.gov. You can either mail those back or drop them off at your clerk's office. For a full breakdown of what's on your ballot, you can text VOTE to 208-321-5614. We'll send a link to our voter guide directly to your phone. We also have all of this information in Spanish on ktvb.com/espanol. And that's the 411 on the 208. I'm Abby Davis.
Infrastructure. It's a necessity for cities to function. But why is Nampa asking for help to pay for a Canyon County road project? Stay tuned, Steve. We got the answer to your viewer question. Anything else out there we can help you answer? All you got to do is text it to us, as well as your comments and concerns. 208-321-5614. That is the number. But as always, include your name and the hashtag the 208. We'll share and try to answer as many as we can at the end of the show. If we don't get to it today, it'll be another day. As you probably know, we are a big fan of viewer questions here on the 2-8. Finding the answers helps us fill the show, and we also get a chance to learn something in the process. And sometimes it takes a little time for us to get to those answers, but during election season, there's a bit of an urgency to it to get you the answers before you cast your ballot. Joe, we got a great question on NAMP, I guess, on a really big number when it comes to what they're asking citizens to pay for on a transportation bond.
Yeah, $38 million general transportation bond, Brian. And yes, we got a great question in from Steve Hoffman. We'll take a look right now. Steve writes to us, not sure if it's a news story or not, but how can Nampa City float a highway bond for this upcoming election cycle this May that contains a highway project that is outside the city limits? The proposed highway project is to add on-off access to the new Highway 16 extension. This project would use Nampa City resident tax dollars to fund a county project. Those in the county that will be impacted by this highway project cannot vote. What's the story here? That is a fantastic question from Steve. So, $38 million question has a lot of features baked in, but the underlying theme is improving movement in and through Nampa, and this is a result of community feedback. And there's actually 10 different pieces that are essentially a part of this entire bond here. So let's take a look over here at the touchscreen, and with a lot of different factors, the city of Nampa has put up a lot of things. For example, here spelled out on the bond website, you will be able to take a look. For example, Part 1, it involves Treasure Valley Marketplace and Midland intersection improvements, and the idea of that part of the bond, improve traffic flow and reduce delays by increasing intersections capacity, a few other things like that. So as you go through this website here, the city of Nampa did a nice job of kind of explaining exactly what the area will be, what the proposed project would be, and kind of why they want to do this project. And if you come down to point 4 here, you will see the Southeast Nampa connection to State Highway 16. So, Steve asks, why is Nampa doing this portion? State Highway 16 is not Nampa's responsibility. Nampa City resident tax dollars to fund a county project. It doesn't seem fair. So, to answer your question, the ballot question on this portion specifically, it is for design only, and you'll see that right there. So the Southeast Nampa connection to State Highway 16 project is for new access to that highway area from I-84 from the south side, part of the project. Also includes a new east-west connection idea as well that would extend Stam Lane from Robinson Road. But the language specifically says here, and we'll look at it together, if approved by voters, bond funding would be used to complete the design portion for this significant project. Goes on to explain that once the design is complete, it enables the city of Nampa to compete for state and federal construction funding to help pay for this $80 million construction project. So, estimated start of design with bond funding would be 2027, so it would be done a lot sooner with bond funding. Without bond funding, it would take between 2040 and 2050 to get this done. You can see there the $9 million price tag on the project. It breaks down individually there. So here's a great breakdown of the cost of the bond and kind of what the allocations will be. The congestion management is a large part of it, pedestrian improvements, another large part of the bond. I just want to say that all of this is on the city of Nampa's bond website. They did a great job to really explain this all. But long story short, to answer Steve's question, Brian, this is about design and in the future, hopefully construction. But that's only if Nampa voters approve that as the whole $38 million question.
$38 million for a design project?
Well, no, it would only be $9 million out of that $38 million. So the other 10 construction parts, it's all a big part of it. It's a big plan from Nampa to, well, make big changes.
Okay, got it. All right. Thanks, Joe.
And sticking with some other views of Bogus Basin right now, this view in particular offers us a beautiful view ahead of what we saw today with all those clear conditions and clouds building in the distance. We've had the warmer temperatures as well. Couple spots not seeing quite as much sunshine like we have been seeing over in Twin Falls, a little bit more clouds and some sparse showers. You can see not all of that moisture was making it all the way to the ground, so these showers are on the lighter side, but you can see some of that activity getting a little bit more busy towards Sun Valley and getting closer to Mountain Home. So we expect that activity to continue over the next few hours while we still have some of that daytime heating, but otherwise pretty limited as far as shower activity goes. Hopefully you've been feeling the warm up today, because we're almost at least 10 degrees warmer than yesterday in almost every location on this map. So much warmer conditions. Those brings those high temperatures in the 70s, even 80 degrees for Ontario, 74 the high so far today in Boise, 60s in the mountains, and over in Twin Falls close to 70 degrees today. And we are warming even more so as we go into tomorrow, tacking on a few more degrees of warming. But as we look to areas to the east, some of the Central Mountain areas and some of Magic Valley spots, seeing a little bit more of that cloud cover once again. But as we look at your 7-day forecast, I don't know, it doesn't get much better than this. Warming up all the way through Sunday, 83 degrees, which is Mother's Day. So things staying really nice and warm and beautiful for you.
Get to your comments on this Thursday. This one sent in from Georgie with regard to the transgender bathroom bill that is now before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals on whether or not to put an injunction on it. I find it ridiculous that proper trans bathroom usage is even questioned. Nobody is going through years of hormones and treatment to get into a bathroom. The law doesn't stop assaulters, and neither does a placard on the bathroom door. No one is masquerading as the opposite gender to get into bathrooms. This question from Scott, who's curious about, have there been any complaints about this, about students or parents having this problem where somebody's just dressing up or pretending to be transgender to get into the bathroom? And that was what was brought up today by the attorney for Lambda Legal, saying their plaintiffs, on the plaintiff side, saying there is no evidence. The state has provided no evidence of this happening anywhere across the state. And school districts, 25% of them, already had policies in place that kind of made up for this and allowed for this, and they have reported no problems with it either, which is kind of the crux of their case, that this is a issue or solution looking for a problem. I thought about telling you how many cases there are against the state of Idaho, but then again, the show is only 30 minutes long, says Jeff. Well, 23 minutes to be exact, and yeah, they call that court TV, I think, if you had time for that. Isaac in Boise, asking for more questions. I guess that was our mistake. Wife and I can't decide what to have for dinner. Any suggestions? Swedish meatballs. Go with that, but here's the question you have to ask yourself. Go traditional with no sauce or non-traditional with the cream sauce? You decide.